social platforms, YouTube as well as Facebook. Well, we welcome you and feeling so energetic today, having been told by the Zambia Electricity Supply Company, ZESCO, that they'll try by all means now with extra power imported into the country to maintain at least 4 hours to 7 hours of stable power supply. Well, that's not what Zambians want to hear, really. If you tell me, remember the comparison that people are making over power supplied to Namibia, and Namibia is appreciative of what Zambia is doing, and obviously they are enjoying power on a daily basis than it is happening back home. Contractual obligations or not, the Zambian people are looking forward to a time where they'll be told, well, we will have power for 24/7. If there'll be no power supply, it could be because there is a fault or the constant maintenance of the power supply gadgets and all that. But then we have been assured with the steady raising of water in the Kariba, you don't expect to have no power. But I didn't see power at home. I know it came, but I was fast asleep. So power coming at midnight really, well, is a disservice for people. But it's better than nothing. Like I said the other time, at least water in the fridge will be cold. We'll have a benefit of drinking cold water. We're not talking much of the rainfall activities now. I think the update that was given by the meteorological department is that there is some influence somewhere that has diverted the water, the rain pattern from the southern part of this country to the northern part of this country. And so hence we've seen reports coming from Livingston, especially that there is no rainfall activities that have happened in the last 2 weeks. In Lusaka, well, we are counting days now. We hope that this is going to change over time. I think we still need much of the rains for food as well as for power generation. But as things stand, we did show you the outlook for this week. We do hope that there will be a change of events. But also ZESCO did clarify to say, well, it's not every water that you see is headed to Kariba. The only water that is headed to Kariba is water that is coming through the Zambezi River. And any other river does not channel its waters to the Caribbean. So meaning there is still need for more water for us to see stability. What happens after this? You and me will have to probably stop over depending on ZESCO. Really, the issue of solar, the issue of gensets and all that is supposed to be something that governs us. Well, that's just what I had to say today about the power situation in this country and what ZESCO is promising us. Today, we will be discussing, like I did indicate, this is the month of stewardship, and so we are discussing issues pertaining stewardship. We did start on Monday. We had Pastor Kenfield Sindolo from Lusaka Conference. On Wednesday, we had Pastor Kebi Shiveleki from Woodlands Conference. And today, we have from Midlands West Zambia Conference, Pastor Samakai Kahangu, the Stewardship Director. And we are discussing stewardship and the community as we try to focus on the serving others and caring for creation as part of stewardship. We take a break. When we do return, we get into the main discussion with Pastor Kahangu.
Step into the month of love with the best entertainment on Top Star for an affordable price of 180 kwacha on Antenna Classic or Dish Smart. Witness the best of English football in the Carabao Cup semi-finals. Watch Newcastle clash Arsenal on Wednesday, 5th February at 22 hours and Liverpool versus Tottenham on Thursday, 6th February at 22 hours, all live on World Football. Also join the Spanish Bears with the Madrid Derby when Real Madrid battles Atletico Madrid on Saturday, 8th February at 22 hours live on Sports Premium. But there is more! Catch up with stories of love and broken friendships in Hidden Lies, showing from Monday to Saturday at 19 hours and Deceit, airing daily at 2040 hours on Novella E+. Quickly get your Top Star decoder and subscribe now. Top Star. Enjoy digital life.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. You are free to participate on this program by way of sending your contributions to 0976 151517. This number is also on WhatsApp. You can send us those WhatsApp messages on what you feel is your contribution on this particular program. But better still, we are streaming live this program on Facebook as well as YouTube. But also, you can follow us on TikTok, and we promise to follow you back when you follow us. Today, we are discussing stewardship and the community. Remember, most of the times we talk about money, 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 and we did try by all means on this program to look at other issues, like we were looking at talents, time, of course, treasure is money, but also the biblical principles that pertain to stewardship. But today, let's look at the community really. How does stewardship affect the community? And maybe by coincidence, Pastor Kahangu is here, and Midlands West Zambia Conference has been for some time now doing what is called benevolence. And that is actually something that comes closer to the community. But, well, I don't know if he's going to fill us in on that at some point. We also did see a number of activities that are happening in terms of stewardship in kind. I'm trying to see if I'm going to discuss that also at some point. But that basically is what we are doing. Pastor Samakai Kahangu, Midlands West Zambia Conference Stewardship Director, is in the studio. Pastor, it's a privilege to have you on Hope Channel Zambia. Welcome to Hope Live.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure indeed to be back at Hope Channel, and in particular to be present here at Hope Live.
To be back, you've been here before.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while. Yeah,
it's good to be back.
So happy New Year to you. It's February, but we are still in the New Year.
We are still in the New Year. Happy New Year too.
Great. Yours is different. The two stewardship directors that have been hosting the past few days are all new in the office. You are continuing as stewardship director at Midlands West Zambia Conference. Just fill us in. How is it panning this far after the session?
So far, so good. I wouldn't complain. I think after the sessions that we had, the church is settling. The leadership is there to give guidance for the work in the conference to continue. And I think so far, so good. We have begun the year. And we are hoping that the Lord indeed shall be gracious to ensure that the work continues.
Amen. Work has to continue. Whether there is change or there is no change, God's work has to continue. Let me draw you, before we get into the discussion for today, let me draw you back to, I think, the previous year and the other year, though I know you joined midway as stewardship director, the transition from your initial office as youth director, if I'm not mistaken. There have been activities that we have observed that were happening in the conference last year. My prayer is that they continue even this year. The aspect of tithe in kind. It seems like Midlands West, you are doing fine in that area.
Of course, we do not have, in our territory, we do not have as much animals as probably the southern part of Zambia has.
All right.
But we still have members who have some animals. But I think we have been consistent in terms of educating members about the need to keep those animals, but also being faithful in managing them, and also remembering that those things belong to God. And I think, like you can rightly put it, there have been quite a very positive feedback over the last 2 years that I have been in the Department of Stewardship. We have received, I think, almost 500 animals.
Wow.
As a result of the efforts we've been making to ensure that people respond also from the crows that they have.
And talking about education, really, we have observed some of the items were aired here on Hope Channel Zambia in our news, where not only are you teaching people the importance of, you know, counting the animals and returning them as part of tithe in kind, but you yourself, Pastor Kahango, have been involved to ensure that these animals are vaccinated, and there are some exercises that were done for free to these our members and non-members alike. Fill us in on that one.
All right, so one of the things I observed, I think in the first year that I was assigned to lead the stewardship department, was that oftentimes we as a church are perceived to be more interested in members giving. But I think over and above, the church is not there only to teach members in terms of how they can be faithful to God, in terms of returning tithes and offerings from tithe in kind. But I think generally the church has, I don't know how I can put this, you know, we have a situation all over. It's not just our conference or the Adventist church, but everywhere else. If you talk about the church in Zambia, you will discover one fact, that a lot of people spend much of their time doing God's work, which means the church is at the center of influence in the lives of the people. And if the church has got that place in the hearts of the people, then if rightly used, the church then can be an avenue that can bring about transformation in the lives of the people. So because of that opportunity that I saw, we discussed and we said, we will then use the platform we have in stewardship, because you are not just talking about giving, but you are talking about management of these things. So we then decided that we will encourage our members to be able to manage these resources that God has given them at their disposal to the best of their ability. But then I noticed as I went around that many of them, for instance, are farmers, but they do it because that's all that they know. Many of them are keeping animals. They do it sometimes just for the sake of having a name that I have animals. And yet there are people who are keeping animals and they are rich as a result of keeping animals, while others are keeping animals and their lives are not changing. So we decided then to embark on a livestock management training exercise across the conference to educate members, number one, on how best they can monetize the resources God has given them. So we were training them on how best they can keep the chickens, goats, and sheep, and cattle, but not only keep them, but how best they can come up with business ideas as a result of that, so that it can really earn them a living. But we went an extra mile besides teaching them the business side of livestock, but we also went an extra mile to educate them now in terms of how best they can manage them. So it was in that process that then we were able to do demonstrations about how to vaccinate these animals. And then we also went an extra mile, those that would identify as vulnerable people, but they had the animals, either chickens or goats, then we would distribute chemicals for them and the like for free, so that they can go and then attend to their animals. And later we went back to review how they are faring after the initial project. And when we were doing that, we were also now extending a program where we are doing free vaccinations and dipping for animals for the people in the community. And the reason was very simple. We did not focus all this program for our members only. It was open to all members. And I remember when we went to Mumbwa, we had an interesting encounter where when we were doing the training, one of the members told a colleague who was from Salvation Army about the training we were going to do. And when he heard about the training, he came direct from church in his uniform to come and attend the training. And he was very appreciative of the gesture that the conference was doing. And at the end of the day, he was one of the recipients of the free hampers we were giving for animals for our people.
Well, quite encouraging activities that you have carried out as a conference, and so I'm sure plans are still there to continue on that trajectory this year. We can only wish you the very best. Today we are discussing stewardship and the community, and well, coincidentally, you have been involved in community activities like the ones we are just from saying. So we want to see how serving others and caring for creation can be interpreted as a part of stewardship. But first things first, stewardship really and service is something that doesn't receive very good feedback from people that are in the church. And I know you have a tough time in the month of February really to, keep people together, because I know in these churches in the afternoon, it will always be dry. It's not everyone that wants to come and hear all these talks. Yes, I'll be there in the morning, but in the afternoon, well, unless you play some magic, really. But let's start on this note, though. Your definition of stewardship, and how can we relate that to the community or serving others, so to speak?
All right. So when we talk about what stewardship is, and I like the preamble you have said that we have a challenge, and it is very true. Every time people hear there is a stewardship program, there is this apathy towards stewardship, and it has many sides in terms of why people have that kind of attitude towards it. But at the center of it is the manner in which we have packaged stewardship over a period of time, where it has centered so much around money. And no one really wants to talk about the money they possess. And so as a result of that, we have this situation where people have developed negative attitudes towards it. But I think from our conference point of view, and even globally as a church, we are trying as much as possible to package stewardship in the context in which it is from a biblical point of view. So from the Bible, we discover that stewardship, basically in a very plain language, I would say stewardship is management.
Right.
Now, when you talk about stewardship, or when we hear the word stewardship, there are four things that are embedded in that word stewardship. So for there to be stewardship, there must be one who possesses things, or probably an owner. Then there must be the things that he owns. Then there must be one that he has assigned the responsibility to manage what he possesses. And finally, there is the management now of what this particular person assigned does. So basically, this is what stewardship is all about. So stewardship is about management, is about one person being given a privilege to manage things that do not belong to him on behalf of the owner. So now, when we talk about this understanding of stewardship and how it relates to community, for us to really get a deeper understanding of it, we have to go back to the Genesis account of stewardship to really understand what was in God's mind. So when we read from Genesis chapter 1, where the Bible tells us that God created the heavens and the earth, and from verse 3 all the way up to verse 25, we see God speaking this world into existence. So he is creating the world. By the time you get to verse 26, where we find that God is talking about creating man, who will then be given the responsibility to be the steward over what he has created, you will notice that in creating man, and throughout the process, what God was doing is that everything he created is somehow interconnected.
Okay.
There is a way God designed the world in such a way that almost everything is dependent on something. Now, that in itself tells us that in God's master plan of creation, the world was created to be dependent on everything else that the Lord had created. What that does is that in his plan, he was deliberate to initiate relationships across his creation.
Okay.
And so, when man is finally created, the Bible then says, you will have dominion over the fish, over everything that he has created. So, by God telling man you will have dominion, he was creating a relationship between him as man, as a creature, as a steward, with what he will manage.
Okay.
Okay? So, by the time you talk about stewardship and the community, essentially what you are talking about is that the steward manages the things that exist in the community.
Exactly.
So there is a strong correlation between the steward and the community, because what he manages is in the community. So you can't detach the community from what he manages. And him as a steward and the community and what is in the community which he manages both belong to God. So ultimately, stewardship and the community are so intertwined in the sense that the steward cannot detach himself from the community. And in managing things that do not belong to him, eventually the steward is already in the community, managing things that belong to God.
But Pastor, are you able to share with us maybe some biblical perspectives on stewardship? And because we talked about the community, how is this connected to the community or community service as it were? So from the biblical account, really, the things you are bringing out now of stewardship, being a manager, you quoted Genesis, if I'm following correctly, which basically shows us a picture to say we are going to manage what God has created, dominion that God has given us. So then we probably want you to get into the deeper aspects from the Bible point of view, but then the connection to community service, how does it come in? I'm not just talking about the community generally, but community service where we, as stewards, are accountable to what we do to the people in the community, the spirit of community service.
All right, so to really bring out that aspect, I would pick an example from the book of Matthew chapter 25.
Okay.
Okay? So Matthew chapter 25, reading from verse 14, where we find the parable of the talents. Okay? Now, when you read the parable of the talents, you will find a classic picture of stewardship. Okay. For the Bible says, the kingdom of God is like a master who goes to a far country. Before he goes, he calls his servants and distributes talents to them, or money.
Yes.
And then he goes. When he comes back, they go and give a report of what they did with the talents that he left them with. Now, what you will notice in that story is that, number one, the servants belong to the master. Right. The resources that the master has given them belong to the master. And the master has left them. And where they have remained, then the Bible says by the time the master comes, he requires an account of what they did with what he left them. So one says, you left me with 5. Here are the 5, and I traded, and I made 5 more. Here are the 10. Another one says, you left me with 2. Here I traded. Here are the 4. And the last one also goes and says, you left me with 1, I buried, but here is your 1.
Yeah, because you're a difficult master.
Because you are a difficult master. Now, one thing you will notice in that particular parable is that the ones who multiplied did not take the 5 and the 2 that they were left with. They took the 10. The question is, why take the 10? It is because they understood that they are merely stewards. So everything that the master left them with and everything they made in terms of profit, both the capital and the profit belonged to the master.
That's true.
Because when a servant who belongs to the master uses the master's money to make more money, it is all the master's money.
Yeah, unless when the master wants to share with
Unless when the master wants to share. And that's what you see at the end of the day, where the master says, you have done well. He did not grab the 10. He left them still with them. Because he was simply painting a picture that him as a master is not really interested in that particular aspect. What he wants is for the steward to be faithful. But then, here's what I'm answering your question now about the connection between stewardship and community service. Now, what you will notice in that chapter is that where the parable of the talents ends, there is a discussion that it transitions into another discussion. And then the Bible says, and the kingdom of God, and this is what will happen when the Son of Man shall come. Then the Bible says he will separate the goats and the sheep and say to the sheep, I was hungry, you fed me. I was thirsty, you visited me. Now, that's community service now.
Okay.
And you say to the goats, I was hungry, you gave me no food. I was thirsty, you didn't give me no drink. I was in prison, you didn't visit me. Now, why are these, because this was Jesus speaking these things, but why is he connecting them in this fashion? It is because, number one, what you will notice is that for you to be able to go and do community service, you need to have the means to do it. You cannot go and visit someone in prison without the means. You can't be able to take care of the poor without the means. What therefore that means is that, and that's why Jesus Christ deliberately moved from the parable of the talents into that discussion about community service, because how you manage the talents empowers you for community service. So your failure to manage your talents will incapacitate you for you to be able to go and do community service. So ultimately, you will find that then our management of what God has given us, God has not given us those things in order to enrich ourselves, but we are there as his children to be able to attend to the needs of the community. But we will be able to do that based on what? Based on the resources he has given us. So we need to be at our best in terms of managing what the Lord has given us in order for us to have capacity to go into the community and do community service. So these things are so intertwined and connected, and every steward must do their best in everything that they are doing. And when they do that, they'll have capacity then to go and be able to attend to the needs of the community in terms of visiting the sick, attending to people that are orphans and all those things.
I would love to quickly rush to the aspect of stewardship and the environment. But before we go there, while we are still looking at stewardship and service, which is what you have amplified already this far by the parable of the talents that this master gave, and then also the call that helps us look to the end to say, come on, one day we have to account for what we didn't do for the least of these in society. And when we've done it, you come and say, well done, faithful servant. But really, Pastor, how can individuals balance their personal responsibilities with serving others as well as caring for creation? I'm adding creation here because we'll be talking about creation in a little while. But how do you just wake up today, well, I am a steward, fine, but I also have responsibilities. I was looking at a situation, maybe to give you more grounds for responding. This person calls and says, I need help. And then not knowing that you have also a bigger burden that is actually far much bigger than the other person. But this call has come. As a Christian, you want to feel guilty if you are not going to help, because you think, for that person to call me, I need help. But how do I balance then to say, I am not suffering, and that person is not suffering? A win-win situation, even as we look at stewardship. My responsibility, personal, and also responsibility to others, and the environment around me.
All right, so it's a very interesting perspective you're looking at, because part of the reason why the Lord allows us to momentarily, let me use the word on, or to possess what he has given us to be in charge of, it is because he wants us to survive from it. Okay. And this is why you see it from the Genesis account. God had to create the world first before man. to signify that for man to survive, he will need the world he has created for him.
Exactly.
And that was the pattern of creation. But then, it simply means what the Lord gives us to be in charge of is also meant to sustain ourselves as we live our lives here on earth. So then the question is, if I have pressure, another person is also asking and they have pressure, how do I strike a balance between taking care of me, my responsibility, but also the responsibility I have to go and do community service, to help others? So I think the thing you will notice in stewardship is what led to sin from the onset is a focus on me and not another person. And at the end of the day, you will discover that in stewardship, part of the bigger things that God is trying to do is to restore in us the image of his son, which is a selfless image. Because when you look at what Jesus Christ did, it is basically to sacrifice what was rightfully his for the sake of those that were in need, and that was the world which was perishing in sin. So we can learn from Christ that it is never a loss to sacrifice your own comfort for the sake of another. Now, I think what is key is to strike a balance, like you're putting it. There comes a moment, I think all of us as Christians, we experience this.
True.
One thing you and I can agree is that needs or wants, they never come to an end. So if you wait for a time when you will not have pressure, you may never have it. Because every time you manage to sort out one pressure, another mushrooms. That's the nature of life.
True.
So you will find that you are always running around because problems always come. In fact, money seems to magnetize problems. The moment that you receive something, you can be fine the whole day. If you are broke, no one will call you to ask for anything. The day you receive something, it's like everyone else also receives a notice that he has received something.
Yeah.
And automatically you hear people calling. So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that needs never come to a point where you really don't have them. As a result, if you wait for a time where you are comfortable yourself, you may never really come to a place where you can help others. And so you have to assess, depending on the needs that you have at a particular time, there are some of these things that you can forego and be able to help another person so that they can also come out of the situation. Saying this, I have come to believe, because we are discussing stewardship but also community service in this sense, I have come to a firm belief that oftentimes when we say that I have helped someone, the assumption usually we have is that the one who benefits in the process is the person that we have helped.
Okay.
But I have come to a firm belief that, in fact, when you help as bride, when you help someone, it is not only the person you have helped who has benefited, but you who has given, you equally benefit in the process.
Okay.
And this is why all these people that are in need and we help, they are there also to help the people with the means. Because for you to be able to exemplify the principles that you believe in as a Christian, you will need instances and you will need those people for you to demonstrate that you have the character of Christ. And so they are needed for you to realize that, okay, so I am capable of being selfless for the sake of another person. So we can always go to an extent where you sacrifice it momentarily for yourself so that you can assist another person.
Right, so it's possible that I can lay off my own burdens and then carry another person's burden. But don't you think God will also ask you, especially for one that runs a family, where maybe the sacrifice that you have made, I'm trying to be this manager, managing God's resources. Then there are others that need this resource desperately. I equally need it, but maybe my desperation is not like theirs, because I have a cup of sugar while others don't necessarily have anything. How would God, in the spirit of stewardship, look at me dishing out to another equally in need, neglecting my own?
So the Bible in 2 Timothy admonishes us that anyone who fails to take care of his family is worse than an infidel.
Right?
Now, what that essentially entails is that it is expected of every child of God that they must be able to take care of their family.
Amen.
But Jesus also said, the poor you will always have among you. In other words, while you have your own responsibilities, you will always have people that are in need.
Okay.
Now, how will God look at you? When you go to Exodus chapter 20, reading the Sabbath commandment from verse 8 up to 11, one interesting thing you will notice, the Bible says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do your work. Now, it continues and says, the seventh day is the day, the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, neither your sons or your daughters,
Servants,
nor your servants,
or the guests,
nor your
guests.
the cattle, or rather the things you possess, nor your stranger who is within your gates. Now, from there, you can pick something in terms of what God expects of us as stewards. Okay. Number one, he expects us to work. And in working, we must be productive. And in being productive, you will also need to involve your sons and your daughters in the work. That's why on the Sabbath day, they must rest. It means they are also involved. But beyond them, this work, because you are productive, it will take you to a point where you must be able to employ male and female servants.
Okay.
So in the mind of God, the Sabbath was coined for lack of a better word, an employer or a businessman. Okay? And then
I'm following.
it says, on that day also, what you possess must rest.
Okay.
But the Bible then adds the last component, even strangers that are within your gates. Now, that's where the aspect of community service comes in. So, in other words, what the Bible essentially is saying is, as you work together with your family, don't forget the component of the stranger who may come around within your gates.
They'll always be there.
It simply means, as you build a house, always think about an extra room where you can accommodate a stranger. As you look for money, always think beyond your own family. But really, to answer your question straight, is that we have first and foremost the responsibility to take care of our families. True. Because neglecting your family is not Christianity. So you must be able to take care of your family. But beyond, if you have capacity to assist, then go an extra mile and assist. But also, like I said, as you take care of your family, there will be times maybe what you need is so much to take care of yours, because how we manage our lives differs depending on the status that we have. So for you, maybe what you may need to sort out your pressure is 10,000. You find someone, all they need is 100 kwacha. So you can't say, I am looking for 10,000 to take care of my family. I can't assist someone who is looking for 100 kwacha. You can definitely lend a hand and
I'm trying to look at the scenario. I don't know where I read this one. It could be in the Bible, where, no, it's not in the Bible, but there is a scenario, Pastor, where two people are praying. One is asking for 1 million, another one is asking for 1,000. So this one says, you are disturbing God. I'm going to give you 1,000 because what I want is much. So you shouldn't distract God by 1,000. Let me give you my 1,000, and I concentrate on the million. So I hear you quite all right when you say, in the position where you are able, there is no harm in helping others. But only then when you really don't have. But then the issue of not having also raises questions in that we have been given the responsibility to be productive. And so while strangers will be within our gates, we should have the ability to, you know, have an income that is quite stable, and we can also extend to those in need. But let me move away from actual resources, really, because this is what people don't want to hear. But let's talk about environment equally, because the environment has been neglected by many of us, including Christians. But let me start at this note. What does environmental stewardship mean to you, and why is it important for Christians?
All right, so when we talk about environmental stewardship, when we go back to the book of Genesis, chapter 2, the Bible tells us to say, when man was created, God put him in the garden to work it and to keep it.
That's true.
The clearest example I can give to the responsibility that was initially given to man is of those people who take care of flowers. Yeah. Now, the kind of work that they do is in such a way that they'll be working hard, but there is so much care in what they do. And that was the responsibility that God gave to man. Your job is to work in the garden, to keep it like someone who is taking care of their flowers at home. So you need to ensure that the water is there, the manure is there, and they're growing and they're healthy. That is the responsibility. Now, what that entails is that God's initial plan was that the relationship between the man and the community, or the steward and the environment in particular, is that of taking care of the environment. But then, when you go to Genesis chapter 3, you see an interesting thing. After man has sinned, you see man going to cut a tree, and they start covering their inefficiencies by destroying nature. Okay? And from that moment up to today, man's view of nature changed as a result of the entrance of sin. Instead of us carrying an attitude of caring for the environment, we have become destructive. And you can see it in the manner in which we relate with the environment, that we don't really care about the environment. It's like the environment has nothing to do with me. And yet we forget that God put the environment to be there for our benefit. And how best we care for it will determine how our lives also will be lived here on earth, because we are in this environment and this is where God has put us. And so how we relate to the environment and how we care about the environment, basically, to me, that is what environmental stewardship is.
I'm loving the fact that you have brought in an aspect that really emanates from Eden itself. The entrance of sin now sees the environment suffering. And I'm now thinking within my mind, Pastor, I might be wrong, but all these things that we are grappling with, climate change, initially I was talking about the issue of power outages in this country and the promises that ZESCO has put in place and all that. And I'm thinking now that provided we still have this very bad mentality against the environment, we are likely to suffer more consequences as a result of our carelessness when it comes to the environment. But let's move on. Individuals have this power within themselves. We have this power within ourselves where if we wanted today, we can make a positive impact on the environment that we are found in. So the question then is, how can we as individuals make this meaningful, positive impact to our environment? And what advice would you want to give us in the spirit of stewardship to ensure that in as much as sin entered the world, there is something that we can do?
So it's very easy. It's interesting that in Zambia we have the Ministry of Green Economy, which basically looks at the environment. Now, the whole government has put up a ministry to focus on environmental stewardship. The problem I see, even from the government point of view, is that they have not labored enough to explain to the people why they've even gone to an extra mile of putting up a ministry. Because life has continued as though there is no effort they're trying to do. So what can I do? What can each and every viewer of ours do? On a very simple level. Number one, we are talking about simple things such as, what do you do with litter at home? It starts from there, okay? And sometimes these are small things, minute things in our homes that we don't even pay attention to. Where do you throw your litter? What kind of litter do you throw? So you will find that you go in ShopRite, you have an option of getting a plastic bag or a paper bag. You get a plastic, okay? Already, that's a problem.
They are biodegradable, Pastor.
Yeah, they are biodegradable.
Now, yeah.
But you will notice that they are only maybe chain stores are the ones that have those biodegradable ones. The rest of our people in the community, in the shops, most of the plastics that they are still using today are not biodegradable. So we need to go an extra mile in emphasizing that those plastics we see. You saw, I don't know if you saw, there was a video that the DMMAU did about, you know, how Lusaka is grappling with floods as a result of litter. Basically just that. So you'll find that you have bought water, you have drunk water, and you're driving and you find someone is smartly dressed, but they're throwing the bottle of water through the window. And the question is, where do you think that bottle is going? It's basically small things such as that. So if you know you need water, some things we can adopt is get a reusable bottle, a drinking bottle, so that everywhere you go, you are using it, you are drinking water. When you go home, you wash it, tomorrow you use it again. Unlike buying bottles and then you keep throwing everywhere. So it is simple things such as that. We can also talk about how we manage the environment in terms of trees. Okay. One of the issues I've grappled with, even in the conference where I work from, is the issue of charcoal. Now, when people are burning charcoal, they are forgetting the impact and the necessity why God put trees in the first place. And all these things we are suffering with today here in Zambia is as a result of clearing trees. If you hear people are saying that there is still rain in the northern circuit, the reason is very simple. When you go there, you still find forest today. The southern part and central part of Zambia has no trees. They have all been cut. So what can we do? We can still correct the situation. Of course, maybe not for our benefit now, but for the future generations, we can go on a program of planting trees. Okay. And this is one of the things I intend to really embark on in our conference this year, to deliberately set a day when people can go and plant trees deliberately, so that the environment then can be nurtured once more. So it is basically simple things such as that, where you throw your litter, what you do with the trees. You can decide, okay, I will not be using charcoal. All these are things that impact us directly on our lives, but we also have the opportunity to make decisions that can contribute to the well-being of our environment.
Maybe it's an issue of mindset, really. Because
yes, it is. It is really an issue of mindset, and change begins with what people believe. No matter, even if you put punitive measures, if the mindset has not changed, you will still have a problem with the environment, because people will continue being who they are and they'll continue doing life as usual, but they don't. And when things become bad, that's when now they cry to government, no, we are suffering here. But the question is, you are the same people that contributed to the garbage. When cholera comes, then you start crying foul that no, the government is not taking care of us, and all those things. So
Pastor, time
really
is pushing me to the wall. But let me also probably find out at this juncture that, does the Bible in any way specify my role as an individual when it comes to caring for the environment?
So the Bible is very plain and clear. Like the example I gave you from Genesis, you'll find that the Bible is talking about caring for the environment. When you go to Leviticus 25, Deuteronomy 25, it's talking about community as well as the environment. In particular, when you read from Revelation chapter 11, verse 18, the Bible is very clear to say the Lord will destroy him who destroys the earth or the environment. And this is where sometimes people need to be taught that God looks at how we treat the environment. And the steward who is harsh to the environment is not a good steward.
Yeah.
And God has got no business dealing with stewards that are evil. Because he has given you the environment to manage and not to destroy. So if me as a steward, I'm destroying the environment, I am being a bad steward. Me and that steward who was burying the talent are not different. We are all unfaithful. And so, one qualification about being a steward is that you must be faithful. Right. And faithfulness entails I should care for the environment because God has given me the environment to manage and to care for.
As a conference, under your watch care, Pastor Kahangu, Stewardship Director for Midlands West, I am very sure, I'm coming back to community now as we near the close of the program.
Yes.
Are you able to, from your experience, really share some practical ways in which individuals can engage in community service and outreach? Now, I am also looking at the environment itself. You have just told us here that you want to embark on tree planting exercises across the conference, which is very commendable. But maybe to help all of us to appreciate these issues that they are part of stewardship, how can we be practical, deliberately about these things, and maybe what would be your advice in that regard?
All right, so thank you so much. In terms of the practicability from the conference point of view, number one, we did a bit of it last year where in my movements, I move a lot, so I met one farmer who is into conservation farming. Okay. Nothing else, and that is all he does. I was very impressed with the soybeans and the maize and the things I found. And then he told me, no, I did some training in conservation farming, I have certificates. And so I told him, you see, while we encourage people to farm, I think from a stewardship point of view, it would actually be prudent to teach them how to do conservation farming, because conservation farming is not just concerned about productivity, but it's also concerned about the environment, how you can sustain the environment. And why is that important? Today, Bright, we have a situation where a lot of people are migrating from Central Province, going into Ruapula, going into Northern and Northwestern provinces.
I could be one of them.
Yeah, it's possible. So the question is, what are they looking for? The land that they owned here is no longer profitable for them. In other words, it has been destroyed. So they are looking for greener pastures. But the problem is, the same way they destroyed this land, they are going up north to go and destroy the land that side.
Eventually it will be the whole country.
So eventually, and it will not be, maybe in the next 20, 30 years, it will be the whole country that will be affected. Why? Because the people are using methods, in wanting to be productive, are using methods that destroy the environment. And so we
have actually depleted fish in the
yes.
rivers because of our very strange methods of catching fish. And I want to think...
You find people are using a mosquito net to harvest fish.
Even the smaller fish.
Yeah. So really, in terms of then what we need to do, we are engaging in activities that are aimed at educating people as they manage the environment, as they manage the things God has given them, how best they can also take care of the environment. But also, in doing this, we are engaging them to ensure that as they carry out all the things they are doing, we can then be in the forefront to encourage this. Now, how is this related to issues of community service? why not, in doing community service, do community service that also restores the environment? So for instance, we buy trees and then distribute to the communities to plant. So it's community service because you are bearing the cost of the whole program, but at the end of the day, you are helping the community. Sometimes they may not even understand what you're doing and appreciate what you're doing at that particular time, but you're doing that. The other things that we have done as a conference, like you put it in the beginning, we began, I think this should be the 4th year we will be running that program, the benevolence strategy.
Right.
Now, the benevolence strategy is born and bred in our conference, and the idea behind it really is that I think sometimes we spend too much time in the church as a church.
Okay.
But then for the benevolence strategy, we coined the theme that was saying a church in the community. And we dedicated 1 week in the month of October, within which all members of the church on a daily basis will dedicate their time to go and do different works of community service in the community. It's something similar to what used to be there, I think when I was still very young, in the Kaunda days, and also I think the Chiruba days, I can't remember. But in the Kaunda days, it was so visible. Was it Community Week? That week where when we go
towards independence.
Yeah, where you go to school, but you don't learn, you go and do works in the community.
Sure.
So it's something closer to that.
I think it still happens in a few schools around.
But it's not so much promoted, I think, now.
Yeah.
But in those days, you will do work the whole week. And so the idea is during those times in our conference, we have now members putting on overalls, and then they go into the community to clean drainages, to pick up litter, to bury people that are in the mortuaries. All sorts of community service, both that attend to the needs of the people directly, but also attending to the environment. I remember there was a place where, I think somewhere in Ballaston where we went, and the Dorcas mothers identified a small community, I think about 4 or 5 houses, but they were living and there was no proper sanitation, no toilet, nothing. And they were using plastic bags to help themselves. Now you can imagine the impact that was having to the environment and the community within which they were living, and how risky it was also for their own health. And so the mothers mobilized themselves, went and cleared the whole thing where they were throwing that litter, and where they were helping themselves and throwing those things, cleaned the whole thing and removed everything, then made sure that they provided a toilet for them that was flushable.
Okay.
And the whole community in that particular locality now had something they could use which was going to be healthy for them. But this is not only talking about matters of the environment, but also their health, but also really helping them because it was a need in that particular home.
Well, interesting things coming out of the Midlands West Zambia Conference. Your concluding remarks on this discussion, Pastor?
Thank you so much. I think in conclusion, I would say we must all count it a privilege that the Lord has allowed us to be his stewards. And in allowing us to be stewards, we must never come to a point where we think or assume that we possess any of the things that are in our disposal. So we must always remember that the Lord owns it all, but he owns us also, and he has given us the responsibility to use what he has given us ultimately for the benefit of community. I always argue that after you have built houses, you have cars, you have money, when death knocks, death has a way of helping us realize that we are not owners. As a result, as I manage what the Lord has given me, I should always know that I am not here permanently. Therefore, I must do what the best I can to use the resources God has given me to impact society, because that is all that matters at the end of the day.
Amen.
What impact did I leave in the lives of my children? What impact did I leave in the lives of the people that surround me? What impact did I leave in the community? What impact did I leave on the environment? And so we have a responsibility to take care of ourselves, to take care of the people within our homes, to take care of the people in our community, but also to take care of the community itself. Because when you take care of your children and you leave your children with an estate, but you destroy the environment, you are leaving your children with an environment that will not be good for them.
True.
And so this whole thing is so connected such that what you do for your children, you must also do it in terms of how you treat the environment, because your children, you leave them in that particular environment. And so they are the ones now. For instance, we are grappling with the issues of load shedding. The people who actually destroyed the environment, causing this drought today, are no longer here. But we, their children, are here. So if they took care of the environment better, would be living a different life today. And so how I relate with people and how I relate with the environment is very important, because it has got a ripple effect even when I'm no longer there.
Pastor, thank you so much for the insights really shared. I know there is more that we could have offloaded today, but we wish you very well as you embark on many activities that are going to help people realize that it's not about the money. It's about what we have done that in the end is going to generate money.
Yeah.
We should be the least to complain. Of course, we have the right to complain when we are not comfortable with the issues of load shedding, but let's play our part as good stewards. I think this is the message you have brought to this discussion, to correct the situation. Yes, indeed. And that is supposed to be our focus area as Christians, because God will not only query us over the money we didn't bring, but how we've destroyed the environment, but also the issues of community services. Very, very practical, but very important, and yet not very much supported by most of us. But stewardship really also checks on that, and it becomes very critical. Thank you so much once again for coming through to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, we end here. Pastor Samakai Kahangu, my guest on Hope Live today, as we conclude the series on stewardship. Remember, February is the month of stewardship, and we try as much as we can to ensure that even on this platform, we don't drift away from the idea of encouraging ourselves to be stewards of what God has placed in our hands. Time, talent, as well as resources. That's the treasury. We will probably have to leave it here for today in the interest of time. And many thanks for you for watching the program. I did check on what people are saying on Facebook. Wumba Marek, watching from within Lusaka, thank you so much. And Mishek Njovu, I don't know which point exactly, it would have been better for you to highlight. He says, point taken, man of God. That is to you, Pastor Kahangu. Then Malele Hangwengwe, watching from Wangwa, thank you so much. And pretty sure that these are headed to Chipata in Eastern Province for the Ntwala traditional ceremony that is coming over next week, I'm sure. Then Chinkuli Supe says, you are articulating issues well, boss, like the chief marketer himself. Right? Thank you so much. And Pastor Crispin Chisala says, hallelujah, Samakai Kahango. Thank you so much for that, Pastor, and we appreciate your viewership on this program today. Well, okay, quite a lot coming from our WhatsApp line. Yeah, the majority are just saying hi. Our text line is unfortunately not responding, but we would have loved to check on what you are saying there. Thank you so much for your time. We are back on Monday. Monday, we will be talking something also that concerns the community approach, the side of community work that the church is doing through ADRA Zambia and ADRA International. ADRA, the whole world, is involved in a lot of activities. But let's check on what ADRA Zambia is doing as we near. Well, there are many people that really are pushing us towards the issues of love. Yeah, because you believe February is a month of love or stewardship?
As a stewardship man, February is the month of stewardship.
So we shouldn't be bothered.
But I think how we relate with our spouses, with our partners and everything else is part of stewardship.
Part of stewardship.
Yeah.
So pressure should be on us.
Yeah.
And also incorporate stewardship as part of the month of love.
Yes.
The brothers are not happy. I wish one gentleman was here because he was thinking of how to convince the partner to say, "This is the month of stewardship. We can't talk about love issues and all that." But I've seen the gentlemen that are saying next week from Thursday to somewhere Saturday, they are calling for prayer and fasting, and it has to be away from home, just to avoid the Friday date, which is going to be the 14th of February. Well, I don't know how you're taking that, but well, from all of us here, we are saying thank you so much. We meet on Monday at exactly 12 hours, because on Monday, the program starts quite earlier as we have ample time to discuss many other issues. From me and Pastor Kahangu in studio, many thanks to our colleagues in transmission and the entire production team. We are back on Monday. Keep watching Hope Channel Zambia, media that changes lives. Bye for now.